Arlene, where are we?
We are in Lagunitas Brewing Company.
Brewery
Company.
Brewery.
Brewing Company. Yes.
People mumble. You're gonna notice that these tours are not scripted, and just like our beers, they are rarely censored. There's plenty of adult themes going on out here. We like to party here at Lagunitas. Let me just put it lightly. So how many first timers here?
Woo!
Awesome, welcome. We like making new friends around here, and it is job security for us tour guides, so thanks for being here. How many out-of-towners here?
Woo!
Awesome, welcome to Petaluma. You out-of-towners probably notice how radical and progressive this town is. You are not allowed. It is most people's first impression of Petaluma, and it dates back to 1878 when Lyman Bice invented the electric chicken incubator here. Our hatch rates were exponential, and we became the chicken capital of the world overnight.
Woo!
So yeah,
Chicken.
welcome to Petaluma. We're going to be heading into an industrial workplace, fully functioning. So please watch where you're walking. Taller people, watch where you're not watching. If there's a beep beep, it's probably a forklift for us to move. Let's act like a school of fish. Let's all move in the same direction. It allows us to appear larger, and it is very intimidating on the predators. And just like Disneyland, if we can keep our hands inside the ride at all times, please follow me.
Oh, it's beautiful.
So you want to pick your mother out?
So like turn around, like face that way.
Welcome to our cellar / kegging area. This keg knocks out 2 kegs a minute, and a half barrel weighs roughly 164 pounds. Who wants to catch a half a barrel at 164 pounds at 2 a minute all day long? Awesome, you can have that job. Because I used to hand wash and hand fill kegs at a small brewery in Washington State, and let me tell you, it's a pain in the ass. Kegs are a horrible ergonomic design. The handles are at the top, all the weight's below it, and you're picking and you're lifting and you're twisting all day long. Hurts my back just to talk about it. So this red tube here is our equal opportunity employer. Because I don't care if you're built like me or built like this guy, no one wants to catch these kegs at 2 a minute. So that red tube is a vacuum assisted hoist, and it is, the boys call her Betty around here. If you're not familiar with Betty, go ahead and Google Too Short. He'll fill you in on what Betty does. But that vacuum assisted hoist will turn those 164 pound kegs into roughly 4 pounds each, allowing anyone to catch those all day long. Awesome thing. These kegs here, this is the one part of the tour you can touch something. Go ahead and knock on the barrels. You can tell the hollow ones from the full ones.
This is full.
And go ahead and stick your nose in there. The smells you're smelling in those racks, you might be tasting anywhere from a few months to over a year. I'll go over all that when we get to the other side around here.
Yes, they give me a microphone, and I give good microphone. I spent a lot of time on the radio, so I know how to deliver on the microphone. Once again, welcome to Lagunitas, guys. Who likes to party out there? Woo! Wow, different crowd than earlier. Those guys all like the party, let me tell you.
That was my kind of group. Yes, we did not get our start here in the town of Lagunitas. In fact, 20 years ago, our founding father, Tony McGee, was living in the town of Lagunitas there in West Marin. It's a tiny little town. Tony had been a traveling professional musician for years. His 30s came around. He thought it might be time to settle down and grow up and maybe get a real job. He figured life on the road playing reggae might not always cover the bills. So he went into print media sales. And in the early 90s, he thought this was going to be his ticket to the top. It was not. In fact, 1992 rolls around, he finds himself roughly 32 years old, roughly $32,000 in debt. So while Tony's business is doing this, auguring into the ground, he has fallen in love with the craft beer revolution, and he's doing more and more of this all the time. And his brother-in-law notices that as Tony's business continues to fail, he continues to spend all this money on this fancy ass beer. So as a joke, literally this company was founded on a joke. Tony's brother went out and got him a Mr. Beer 5-gallon homebrew kit, Christmas 1992. Do we have any homebrewers in the house? Awesome.
Just Mr. Beer.
Right on. Well, you can relate to this story. And you'll understand why it was a cruel joke. Tony's brother-in-law was trying to convince him home brewing on a 5-gallon Mr. Beer kit was going to save him a lot of money on all this fancy beer. And every home brewer knows that's a lie, especially on a 5-gallon system. So it's kind of like going out and buying a boat to save money on fish. And so Tony's not going to let his brother-in-law get the upper hand in this joke, so he goes hard at work. And his first batch was awesome. If you ever start home brewing, do not expect this at all. You will realize how lucky Tony truly got. His second batch, it tasted more or less like ass. If you ever start home brewing, get used to this flavor. It is very, very common. The third batch was really good again, and the fourth batch tasted more or less like rotten broccoli that was marinated in kerosene. So Tony has no science background, no brewing background. He's coming up with his own science along the way. He finally learns you can't let the dogs lick the spoons between the stirs and the mash. And he goes out and buys a book on yeast cell development and one on home brewing and starts his work. So just give you a quick brewing science. Brewers do not brew beer. Crazy talk, right? Our brew house makes 0 beer. 0 alcohol. What a brewer and a brew house makes is known as wort, sugar water, barley, tea, however you want to look at it. And the beer and the alcohol doesn't get started till we transfer that wort out into the magical kingdom of fermentation out there. And there we're going to add this organism that's so magical, it's like a unicorn. Brewers know it as yeast. And that's where the party gets started out there. And the yeast literally cruises around the wort, eating up all the sugars it can, farting out CO2 along the way, peeing out what we love, the ethanol alcohol, and then it will pass out there at the bottom, like a lot of us will do on a good Friday, Saturday, Tuesday night, whatever, Sunday. Don't judge. And so Tony was only 10 batches in. He was on his home stove creating that wort, and he had that common occurrence called a boil over. Every home brewer is familiar with this situation, because it's quite common. It's pretty much that sugar water, that wort you're creating, pretty much turns into a 2nd grade science project that has gone terribly, terribly wrong. It becomes this volcano of caramelized sugary mess spilling out all over the family stove. And in Tony's case, completely destroying that family stove 2 days before Thanksgiving. Yes, the family is on the way, and the bird is in the refrigerator. So Tony's wife, Carissa, who's as supportive these days as she was back then, she comes to Tony and says something like this: Tony, I'm really glad you found this new hobby. It makes you very, very happy, and it obviously makes all of our friends very, very happy. Because as a side note, those are the only people that save money in this equation. They're also that brewer's biggest fan, no matter how crappy that beer is. So she's like, our friends are really stoked with your new hobby. You're really happy with it. But what you just did, family stove, this hobby, it's got to go. And I need a new family stove. So Tony gets kicked out of the house as far as
home brewing, his hobby goes, and he moves to the neighboring town of Forest Knolls, equally small like Lagunitas. In fact, the census combines the population. And he goes from that 5-gallon system there to a 3-barrel system at this point. A barrel of beer is of measurement. It consists of 31 gallons, or 2 of what we know of half barrels, kegs here. These are 15.5 gallon. So now he's producing close to 6 of those every batch, close to 100 gallons. And he's only 10 batches in, and he's now applied for all the state and federal permits to be a legal brewer. Let me tell you how crazy this is. In the early 90s, craft beer was not the newest gold mine. There was not even a market for your product. So not only was it really hard work creating a beer that people would actually want to buy, but simultaneously you had to create the market for your beer. So breweries were shutting down as quickly as they were opening. It's a very steep learning curve, but 10 batches in, Tony really feels that beer is his life calling. It's very similar to playing music, very challenging, plus really rewarding. The end result, music and beer, is definitely worth sharing with other people when it's good. So he just goes for it. But he's still thinking like that home brewer back in the town of Lagunitas. There he's dumping all this waste down the drain. It was going into a citywide sewer system and not even being noticed. Well, there in the town of Forest Knolls, he's continuing this practice, but now it's with close to 100-gallon batches. And your main waste after fermentation is known as trub or trub. It's a thick sludge made up of numerous things. But the main ingredient, especially for this recipe, it is mostly dormant yeast, not dead yeast, but the yeast that partied too hard and passed out that I was talking about. So Tony's dumping this all down the drain. Little does he know it, it's going into a 1940s design septic tank. We all know what septic tanks are full of, right? We have children present, so I'm just gonna call it organic material for the sake of this story. And for the sake of this recipe, this organic material just happens to be full of fermentable sugars. So while the lovely community of Forest Knolls is contributing all these fermentable sugars into that septic tank on a daily basis, or more, depending on how regular they are, Tony's introducing all this dormant, sleeping yeast. And let me tell you something, yeast is a whole lot like this guy. When it wakes up, it is hungry and it is ready to party. So this yeast wakes up in the septic tank, and there's all kinds of sugars to eat, all kinds of yeast to meet, all kinds of yeast to make. All kinds of sugars to eat, all kinds of yeast to meet, all kinds of yeast to make. We see what's going on in the septic tank, don't we? We got one hell of a poopy party going on is what we got. And literally sooner than later, kaboom, that septic tank explodes and backs up, and there is poopy beer in the streets of Forest Knolls. It has backed up the storm drains. It backed up the kids' playground down the street. Let's all take a moment and think about the children here. This is one shitty situation for these kids. So this time it's the county of Marin, as well as the lovely community of Forest Knolls, that come to Tony and say something more or less like this. Tony, buddy, everybody loves what you're doing. Everybody loves your beer, but what you just did to this lovely community, this business of yours, it's got to go. And we need a new septic tank. So we're seeing this trend in Tony's early brewing life. He's now been kicked out of his first 2 locations, and for damn good reason. And they were both very expensive messes, and he was already deep in debt. So you think Tony would give up right about now? I know I would, wouldn't you? But hell no, Tony just goes for it harder. And that's when he arrived in radical progressive Petaluma in 1995. And he was about a block and a half down on Ross Street, across from Mesa with the amps over there. And he went from that 3-barrel system to a 15-barrel system. Now he's producing 30 half barrels like this, or close to 500 gallons of beer every batch. And so he started putting it into 22-ounce bottles to make it easier for you guys to get your hands on. And his first production employees over there on Ross Street, they were all volunteers. They were a lot like us. They were stoked to be hanging out at the brewery. Perfect timing, buddy. And they were getting paid free lunch made by Tony's wife, Carissa, and they were getting paid free short fills on those 22-ounce bottles. Well, it didn't take Tony long at all to realize those volunteers, they weren't always doing the best job possible. He started seeing a hell of a lot more short fills on a Friday afternoon than a Monday or a Tuesday afternoon. So he went out and hired his first production employee. Her name was Tenshi. She was very organized. She ran that bottling line all by herself. And the best part about Tenshi is she did not like beer. Perfect first production employee for Lagunitas. I think it was right about that time Tony started making just a little bit of money. So 4 years pass, he outgrows that space on Ross Street. It's time to move again. So Tony has himself a moving party, and let me tell you, that dude knows how to party. He likes his parties to be very circus themed. In fact, we have an annual party that's called our Beer Circus that celebrates that moving party 1999, and these beer circuses are exactly what they sound like, a really good time. Most people can't remember what happens at them, but they're definitely never gonna forget it. And so for that moving party 1999, the original beer circus, Tony invites 500 of his closest friends to this party. He invites 500 of the town drunks to the party. He invites 500 musicians and 500 circus performers. Now don't be fooled, they are all the same 500 people. So they all show up noon, Friday afternoon, 1999. 500 plus people are there. Why? Because there's gonna be free bands going all day long. Free beer flowing all day long. Circus acts were going down. People were swallowing swords, blowing flames. There was clowns on roller skates delivering appetizers. And so Tony makes a toast to the crowd that Friday afternoon, 1999, and says, "Thanks for joining us here at Ross Street, celebrating all these great times. But I've clearly outgrown this space, and that's what this party is all about. And I hope you have plenty of beer in you at this moment. Because I've got to be honest with you guys, I'm very beer rich and money poor, and I can't afford movers right now. So I'm hoping to turn this moving party into a moving parade. How about everyone here grab anything not directly bolted down and let's take a walk." So 5:30 Friday afternoon, rush hour traffic, 500 plus drunks are spotted stumbling down North McDowell here in front of the brewery. This is one of the busiest streets in Petaluma at that time of day. So the bands went mobile. There's a Dixieland marching band in the front leading the way. 500 drunks carrying whatever they could. Most of them were way too busy double fisting it at that point to do anything at all. So there was a drum line in the back to keep those drunks moving. I know, perfect t-shirt for today. And there was a jester up on stilts keeping an eye out on Petaluma traffic, and more importantly, Petaluma PD. And the greatest part about the whole moving parade was definitely the leader. And that just happened to be a... Exactly. Some poor mime was out there trying to direct traffic. Imagine that. A mime actually gets a real job, and it just happens to be directing traffic. Perfect candidate for that position. So with the help of the 500 plus drunks, the jester on stilts, and the mime, we arrived safely at 1280 North McDowell that Friday afternoon, 1999. And we definitely took the notice of the local business community, being 500 plus drunks clogging up rush hour traffic. We definitely took the notice of the local PD. We got a couple slaps on the wrist for that one, but only the naked people in the parade were arrested. And we also ended up getting a bunch of free press out of it. It seems like every time we have a run-in with the man or the law, we get all this free press out of it, and our sales just skyrocket. So all of a sudden people are like, "Whoa, check out this new brewery up there in Petaluma, California, the chicken capital of the world. This place, Lagunitas or Lagunitas or whatever it's called, It sounds like these guys just got a newer, bigger, better location, and it sounds like these guys really, really, really like to party. So when we reopened here in 1999, like I said, our sales just skyrocketed. We have not looked back ever since. But we've been growing as quickly as possible here in Petaluma since 1999, and we've been at full capacity for quite a while. And we have two major problems. The first major problem is quite obvious. I am a recovering parking lot attendant. Yes, I used to skateboard around helping people with parking. I'm sorry, I did everything in my power to make that situation better. It is just getting worse. You can blame it on these big bad beer cans out back. It was kind of like parking beer, parking beer. Looks like beer won that one. Please bear with us. We do have satellite parking underway. Please carpool, because we are very green conscious here at Lagunitas in more than one way. And we've only been able to keep up with 40% of our market demands here in Petaluma. We've been cutting 60% of our market demand short. That's just bad business. I don't care where you're from. So one morning, Tony was doing a little of his morning inspiration. I'm just going to refer to it as the wake and bake. If you're not familiar with this wake and bake, go ahead and Google Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Cypress Hill. Hell, Google Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash, anyone like this. They're going to fill you in on this wake and bake. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing in case you're missing out on it or your place of work doesn't allow you to participate. And so, in Tony's own words, this was a flawless, flawless wake and bake. Because it got the wheels turning, it got the math rolling, because we all like to do a little math after we puff, right? And Tony ended up getting so high that he broke it down to the 22-ounce bottle. And he realized that a 22-ounce bottle of our beer, when it hits the East Coast, say New York State, 4 ounces are going to be diesel when it gets out there. Not literally, but figuratively. We were spending an excess of $140,000 a month on diesel to get our beer out to the East Coast. That's a huge carbon footprint, and we're very green conscious in more than one way. Plus, I want to know what strain he was smoking, because he broke it down to the diesel per ounce, per bottle. Damn, I think I get high sometimes, but I need his connection for sure. So yes, Tony ended up looking at the map of the U.S. that day, and does anyone know where we just found ourselves? Chicago, yes. We love Chicago. Chicago loves us. We've been open roughly a year as of May there in Chicago. And if you have a chance, if you're back there in the Midwest, go check out that brewery, because it is awesome. It is 7 square acres in size. The roof on it over 340,000 square feet. That building is so big, it has 4 separate addresses under one roof. In fact, we're gonna move like a school of fish. Hey Brandon, are you gonna be backing up? Yeah. If we can move like a school of fish and move that way. That was just a demonstration on how there's hungry predators everywhere. So yeah, Tony realized we had to get closer to the East Coast. We just opened Chicago. If you're back there, that brewery is so big, it has 4 separate addresses under that one roof. That's how big that brewery is. We've been running off of 22 750 barrel fermenters out back, 10 500 barrel fermenters, 10 300 barrel fermenters. That has been 100% Lagunitas up until last May when Chicago came online a year ago. And they already have 40 of these 750 barrel fermenters plumbed in, and room for over 120 of them all under that one roof. And why are they all indoors? Well, believe me or not, believe the Weather Channel or not, the weather back there in Chicago, it is not as lovely as it is here in Northern California. We have very few lows, but we do have super highs, especially in the fall. Do yourself a favor and drive north, roll down the windows, and take it all in. It is a beautiful, beautiful thing. It's not just the redwoods up north in the fall. There's some green forests up there that are definitely worth exploring as well. And so due to this lovely weather, we can have our tanks outside. They're built like a thermos. They have an outer jacket and outer sleeve. Temperature goes up outside. We can inject that outer sleeve with glycol, with food grade antifreeze. bring that temperature down. If we had unseasonably cold weather, we could bring it up by injecting it with warm water. But yeah, due to lovely weather in Chicago, all those tanks are inside. They have room for 120 of those big bad beer cans. And they've been running the same 250 barrel brew house as we are here in Petaluma. But they figured they were gonna wait a year or two and order their second 250 barrel brew house. But within 6 months, it was clear we needed that second 250 barrel brew house. It is standing in place. It has been plumbed in. It's going to require a second kegging line and a second bottling line for that second brew house. So awesome, awesome things. Why are we growing so quickly? Well, it seems like you guys are very, very thirsty and klutzy. So the more beer you drink or spill, the more we have to make. So thank you for being so thirsty. Thank you for being so klutzy. It's job security for the brewers. So cheers. Careful, wet floor. So we just announced our third brewery location. It's going to be right outside the IE, Inland Empire, there outside of LA, in Azusa, California. It's going to be the same size as Chicago, and it's going to be opening 2017-ish. So why are we growing so quickly? If you guys can move that way again. Oops, he's parking. We're safe. We're safe. False alarm. So why are we growing so quickly? Well, you guys are awesome. You guys are very, very thirsty. The more beer we make, definitely the more you drink. So yes, any questions on where Lagunitas is from, how we got here, where we're heading? Awesome. Well, Lagunitas is heading to infinity and beyond, and thank you for being along for the ride. And we're going to be walking right out here into the magical kingdom of fermentation. Head towards the light. I am right behind you. Cheers.
And we're boiling it off and killing it in the oil kettle. So it's hot side sours that become really popular, and it's a way to do sours without polluting.
So yes, welcome to the magical kingdom of fermentation. This is where we bring the wort from the brew house and we add the yeast, and it literally starts partying in there, creating the alcohol, creating the beer, creating the fun. So I'm going to use our IPA as an example. This is also out here in fermentation where we do our fourth hop edition known as dry hopping. So I'm going to use the IPA as an example. We'll make the wort in the brew house. We'll transfer it out here, add the yeast. About a week into it, after the yeast has been partying hard and there's a lot of that trube, that thick sludge at the bottom, we'll dump that out. It's really going to clean up the beer. There's still going to be enough residual yeast in there to keep converting the sugars into alcohol. And then we're going to fill our hop cannons. And they look identical, and so they've been named Beavis and Butthead. And we're going to take over 40 boxes at 44 pounds. I'm sorry, over 11 boxes at 44 pounds. So over 400 pounds of dry hop pellets. And with CO2, we're going to inject them in the top of these big bad beer cans. And there they're going to slowly dissipate out, infusing the beer with predominantly aromatic qualities and flavor profiles. Because the temperature is far lower out here in fermentation than it is in the brew house, we're not releasing the alpha acids that give us the bitterness to the beer and the bitterness from the hops that give us our IBUs, International Bitter Units. So we're just capturing the aromatic profiles of the hops and the flavor profiles. That's why Lagunitas beer is so dank, so heady on the nose and palate. Because hop's closest cousin in the plant kingdom is cannabis. Exactly. We know who the stoner in the crowd is, and dude, you're not alone. And so yes, that's why sometimes you're drinking our beer and you're like, whoa, this beer smells like weed, or sometimes you're smoking that joint and you're like, wow, this shit smells like beer. It's because they are the closest cousins to each other. So it's an awesome, awesome thing. So there, we're not releasing the alpha acids, like I said, so we're just capturing those really heady aromatic qualities and flavor profiles. Our tongue can only taste 5 basic flavors. It's our nose that ties it all together for us. So before the beer even touches our lips, Those aromatic qualities are stimulating our palate, getting it ready for a good time. So stimulating. So to give you an idea how much beer is around us right now, 22 750s online, 10 500s, 10 300s. That was 100% Lagunitas before Chicago came online. And like I said, they have 40 of these plumbed in and room for 120 indoors. So have a peek at one of these 500 barrel fermenters on the left here. When it comes to a single 500 barrel fermenter, if you drink over a 6-pack a day between 21 and 75 years old, you would not finish a single 500 barrel fermenter. In fact, you would have about 6 months worth of beer there for one hell of a going out party. So I want you to know that there is more than a lifetime worth of beer here for all of us. And even if you believe in reincarnation, there is multiple lifetimes worth of beer here for all of us. So I hope this helps you drink better at night knowing this. I hope it helps you sleep better during the day knowing that Lagunitas has you covered for multiple lifetimes when it comes to beer. So our brew house, which we're about to enter in just a moment, it can go through over 100,000 pounds of dry weight grain every day. You add water to that, it's about 10 times greater in weight. How the hell do you get rid of all that spent grain? Well, here in Sonoma County, when you're not smelling the lovely smells of the brewery here in Petaluma, you're smelling a lot of Sonoma aroma, also known as dairy air. The farmers call it the smell of money, but most out-of-towners are going to do one of these when they get out of their car to see what they may have stepped in. So for years, we've been giving away our spent grain to local farmers. It's a win-win situation. Free waste disposal for us, free feed for these small-scale farmers. That's the majority of their overhead. And the great thing about this whole process is we start with human food-grade ingredients. We don't make our beer out of chicken scratch. And the brewing process converts the carbohydrates to sugars, making it easier for the animals to digest, higher in nutritional value. So they say the happiest cows come from California. We say the hoppiest cows come from Lagunitas. So we've now extended this program. We own the farm directly behind us. We're raising our own beef and lamb in a similar manner, fattened on our spent grains. So if your diet allows, definitely check out our beef burgers and lamb burgers in the tap room. They are right out back there. We call it our Lagunitas program. If your diet doesn't allow, we do have vegetarian options. But if you're a beef eater, I don't know if any of the cows are down, but those cows are really happy, and if you come back in like 4 months, that's what we're gonna be eating. So water's a big deal here when it comes to brewing. That's one reason we moved to Chicago. Those lakes are so big, they're called the Great Lakes. There's no worry about them running out of water anytime soon. Here in Northern California, it is a big deal. So because about 60% of your water is used for sanitation alone when you're a brewer, all these tanks need to be sanitized on a regular basis. Every keg needs to be sanitized before it's filled again. Every bottle rinsed before it's filled. So it takes most breweries anywhere from 3.5 to 4.5 gallons of water to produce 1 gallon of beer. Well, here in Northern California, we can't do that any longer with the drought conditions. So we recently just placed a state-of-the-art water treatment plant right out back. It's the first one of its type to be used in a brewery situation. We hope that other breweries follow suit. It's fully modular. It can expand as we expand. And right away, we're going to be recapturing roughly 40% of our wastewater. We won't use this wastewater in the beer itself. We'll use it for sanitation processes. We'll use it to cool pumps. But when we're recapturing 40% of our wastewater, it's only going to take us 2.5 gallons of water to produce 1 gallon of beer here in Petaluma. Far ahead of industry standards. So awesome, awesome things. Cheers. So any questions about the magical kingdom of fermentation, waste disposal? Yes, sir.
If I buy a bottle of Lagunitas somewhere, can I tell if it's brewed in Chicago?
Great question. So yes, Chicago has all of our bottles have what is known as a Julian date on it. It's going to have a whole code system. Luckily, I have finally have insurance with working for Lagunitas, so I have glasses and I can actually read that shit now. So yes, thank you Lagunitas for providing me with glasses. Yes. No, we'll work for beer at Lagunitas.com. Please come work for us. I got started here a year and a half ago as a parking lot attendant. I was roughly the 340th employee. We're now over 700 strong within 8 months, and then by the time Azusa, California comes on, we're going to be over 1,000 strong. We all get a free lunch every Friday because Tony's wife Carissa insists on this because she used to make lunch for everyone, and so we all sit down with a catered lunch. Even the kitchen sits down with us. We all get a free case of beer every Friday because Tony paid his first employees with a free beer. If we brew something extra awesome like our Born Yesterday or anything like that, we often will get a second free case of beer to share with our friends, our family, our neighbors, pass the love around. Lagunitas love. But we have to wait every 2 weeks for a paycheck, but Lagunitas does pay us every 2 weeks, and it actually cashes. It's awesome. Like, we have money in the bank. It's awesome. Yes, we'll work for beer at Lagunitas.com. So yes, get up in the morning, make your coffee, make your tea, do whatever your morning inspiration is. Get on the internet and look at we'll work for beer at Lagunitas.com, because literally we're going to be hiring more and more people all the time. So back to parking lot attendants, all that stuff. I forget where I was going with it. Yes.
Chicago versus here.
Chicago, yes. So my glasses, now I can read. So yes, thanks for keeping me on my thought of trains. Choo, choo, choo. So yes, there is a bottle date on it, and so the first 3 days are going to be your Julian date, the actual day of the year. So 015, January 15th, 020, January 20th, so forth, so on. We're in August, so right now we're at like 8 times 30, 250-ish, somewhere in there. 240, 250, somewhere in there. So yeah, Julian date, you can get apps for your phone that tell you all this shit. It's way smarter than I am. I get paid for my mouth skills, not my math skills. So yes, so then the next date is gonna be the year. So tell you what year it was made. And then it's gonna have a batch date, so we can, well actually before the year date, batch date. But the last number is gonna be a 1 or a 2. 1 is Petaluma, 2 is Chicago. So to make a long story really longer, or short story really longer. So yes, the plan is, and it's working right now, Chicago's gonna handle Denver East, North, South, a lot of our foreign accounts for our year-rounds, our seasonals, and we're gonna hold down the West Coast like we always have. And we're going to distribute as far east as Denver. So Denver is the place where you're going to see both the rivers meet. And so we've been having some cross-pollination just depending on brewing schedules and demands. We had a little daytime come over from there. But that's been our greatest challenge, is opening a second brewery, because there's 4 ingredients in beer. You have water, you have your grains, you have your hops, you have your yeast. Well, believe it or not, water makes up the majority of your flavor profiles in your beer. That's why when you go to the old world, Europe, every town has its own brewery, and more importantly, every region has its own beer style, because that beer style literally evolved with the groundwater there. In Germany, Czechoslovakia, the Pilsen district, Pilsner, very soft water, very favorable for Pilsner. In the Isles, England, very hard water, very favorable for stouts, porters, those kind of stuff. So what we've been doing both in Chicago and here is we've been stripping our water down to 0, taking out the heavy metals, taking out what's added by the municipalities, like the chlorine, the fluoride, and then we read the type of beer we are brewing at the time. And so that is what's guaranteed, that we can produce the same beer in Chicago as here. We also overnight cases back and forth between our bottling line and Chicago. And we have a lab here and in Chicago pulling samples all the time. All of us employees are welcome to do the Pepsi challenge anytime we want. Blind taste test. It's an awesome, awesome thing. So now we have guaranteed that our beer is the same between Chicago and Petaluma. I know it was a long story, but we got there in the end, right?
Best answer ever.
Right on, cheers. Any other questions before we walk into our lovely brew house? Yes?
Why did you guys decide to open in Azusa when you already have one place on the West Coast?
Great question. That's was the first question I asked, actually. It's funny, we kind of find out things the same way you guys find out things from Tony and Lagunitas. It's through Twitter. And so Tony made this announcement on Twitter that we're moving to Azusa, California, and all of us were like, huh? Because we thought we were shopping more in the southeast, like more like Florida area. Florida loves our beer, so yes, totally. It's perfect drinking weather down there year round. Most people move there or retire there because it is perfect drinking weather year round.
It's hot. We need it.
Yes, totally. And so yes, we love Florida. Florida loves us. So we thought we'd be heading more that direction. Azusa, California. It's actually in the hills there in LA, so there's plenty of water, believe it or not. We've been guaranteed over 100 years worth of water there. It's on a whole other water system than LA. In fact, I think Miller Coors or another big guy is out there brewing beer. So we've been given 100 years worth of water rights out there, so that's good. Plus, it's going to help us with the whole southern corridor of the U.S. It's close enough to here that we're tied in. It's going to be a really easy transition. A lot of people are going to want to come January. A lot of employees are going to want to move to Azusa. So yeah, we can get a little cross-pollination going on. But yes, it is. It's going to be able to take care of that whole southern corridor. So the Southwest, Texas, Midwest, Southeast, all that stuff is going to be coming out of Azusa. We're now in 9 countries, going on 11. I've lived in Mexico numerous winters, surfing down there in Michoacan, and I know our beer is far safer to drink than most of the water down there. So hopefully we're going to tempt them with a little of our beer by sending it down there across the border. Craft beer is huge in Mexico right now. It is really coming on strong. So it's a great place for us to take our beer also, because the weather's perfect drinking weather most of the year, most places. So yes. Any other questions before we walk around the corner? Awesome. Party on, Garth. Beer here in the United States. I'd like to credit the craft beer revolution to President Jimmy Carter. President Carter signed Bill H.R. 1337 in 1978, allowing Americans to brew beer at home. That is how recent this craft beer revolution is. Before 1978, you couldn't simply make beer at home and share it with your friends, your family, your neighbors. That was considered bootlegging. So it was up to the states to handle it how they saw fit after that. It was not until 2013 when Mississippi and Alabama finally jumped aboard. Now all 50 states are home brewing, just like equal marriage. Yeah, it's about time. So, Tony, so welcome to our state-of-the-art brew house. Craft beer, back to that craft beer revolution started in 1978. It makes up less than 14% of the sales annually in the beer industry, but it makes up over 50% of the jobs in the beer industry annually here in the US. So do that math alone. Viva la revolution. And it's not just a revolution, this is a renaissance. We are taking back what was taken from us at Prohibition. This country was founded on beer. Our forefathers were proud beer drinkers. In fact, Benjamin Franklin said something to the effect of, beer is proof that God loves us and wants us to be happy. So as of 2013, there is now more breweries in the US than there was pre-Prohibition. So we finally recovered from that Prohibition bullshit. And luckily for us, the majority of these new breweries are US-owned, US-run breweries. This money is staying here in the good old US of A, providing jobs. So I'm going to jump off my red, white, and blue soapbox for one moment. Welcome to our state-of-the-art brew house. It is designed, manufactured, and assembled by Germans.
Hey.
Why? Germany has been producing beer longer than we've been a country. They do a damn fine job. Plus, if you travel around the world and you see all the old Benzes that are still used as taxi cabs, you know they engineer things really well. They last a long, long time. So we have a Bavarian flag back there to make our German friends feel at home. And our head engineer, his name is Roland. He doesn't speak a whole lot of English. It's getting better every day. But if you ask Roland what he does for Lagunitas here in Petaluma, Roland will tell you this. I pimp out the brew house. And we got a pretty pimped out brew house, so welcome. So what's happening in this pimped out brew house is we're getting between 2 and 3 semis a day of North American grown 2-row malted barley. We are now working directly with our barley farmers up in Alberta, Canada, guaranteeing us high quality ingredients at a fair market value for the next 40 to 60 years, 7 generations, however you want to look at it. That is going to be the biggest challenge in craft beer in the future, is securing enough of these high quality ingredients at the quantity we need to brew scale at the scale that we do and still make it affordable for you. And we're now working directly with our hop farmers up there in Yakima, Washington. Hop's closest cousin, like this gentleman said, is cannabis. And so like its closest cousin, it has to go through a middleman or a broker between the farmer and the customer. So we're cutting out that middleman by working directly with our hop farmers. We're going in there and we're buying them equipment at the beginning of the year. We're helping them with their infrastructure. Those hop vines can grow close to 3 feet a day at the peak of their season. And these hop farmers are doing hop breeding programs for us. Like its closest cousin, it has to be crossbred close to 14 different generations back and forth to guarantee that those genetic traits are passed on to its offspring, and it takes over 3 years for a hop plant to produce enough roots to start producing enough cone flowers. So a hop will have a number for numerous years, close to 15 years before it gets a name. And it has to prove that it's drought resistant, mildew, moldu resistant before, and it has desirable aromatic and flavor profiles before it ever gets a name. So these breeders we're working with are responsible for hops like Simcoe, one of the top hops in the world, Galaxy, another top highly desirable flavored hop. And so in the future, if they create hop strains for us, you're going to see beers made at Lagunitas with our own exclusive hop strains. So I don't care if they're calling them Girl Scout cookies or whatever they're calling these new Skittles, whatever they're calling the new strains, we are going to have exclusive rights to those here at Lagunitas, so you'll see beers made with our own hop strains. Awesome things. So here we just make the wort. All of our grains go into the silver box that ground down into what is known as grist, and it's like a dry cornmeal consistency. This is a 5-vessel system, 5-tank system. First tank we mash in, we hit the grist with hot water, releasing enzymes in the grains. The enzymes convert carbohydrates to sugars. Second tank, water ton, biggest, most expensive tank in the house. Why is that? It does the majority of the work of the brew house. It separates the wort from the grains. Then we do what's called a sparging. We hit that grain bed a second time with hot water, grabbing any residual sugars, any residual flavor profiles. So it's kind of like making 2 pots of tea or 2 pots of coffee. Your first run's really strong, your second one won't be as strong. We blend them together. Third tank is just going to be a holding tank. It's not so much about converting the carbohydrates and sugars at this point. It's more or less like we're steeping our tea. We're developing more complex flavors. So the tank at the top of the stairs is a boil kettle. We do not pasteurize our beer. Once we add the yeast, the beer is alive. We do filter it, but we don't pasteurize it. But here in the brew house, we do pasteurize the wort. So with steam, we bring the wort's temperature up to roughly 220 degrees, killing any bacteria that cause us problems down the line. Temperature drops the first time, we hop in the first time. This is giving us the bitterness of the hops. It's at a high temperature. It's releasing a lot of alpha acids in the hops, and the alpha acids give us our IBUs, International Bitter Units, percentage of alpha acids from those hops. Temperature drops the second time, we hop in a second time, and just like its closest cousin, we're going to capture a lot of those similar flavor profiles, citrus, pine, tropical fruit flavors, depending on the strains of hops. And that's why we call hops our second favorite green sticky bud here at Lagunitas. Temperature drops the third time, we hop in a third time. This is mostly capturing aromatic qualities of the hops. Our tongue can only taste 5 basic flavors. Our nose ties it all together for us. So before the beer touches our lips, those aromatic qualities are stimulating our palate. So stimulating. So we separated the wort from the grains. in the lauter tun. Now we just added all the hops in the boil kettle. We want to separate those. Tank at the left of the stairs, 5th tank in this 5-vessel system, whirlpool tank. There we're going to inject the wort at a high angle, high velocity, creating a natural centrifugal force or a centrifuge. It's like stirring your tea. Solids go to center, liquids get pushed to the sides. We can extract out the sides. Then we send it through a wort chiller, heat exchanger, plate chiller. Hot plates of wort jacketed in ice water. Hot becomes cold, cold becomes hot. The only energy we've consumed is the pump system to run this heat exchanger. This brew house is so pimped out, we can recapture the hot water off that heat exchanger, add it to more hot water, and mash in our next batch. So in a 24-hour period, we can knock out 9 batches of our IPA here in this 258-barrel brew house, allowing us to fill 3 of those 750-barrel fermenters with our beer. Awesome things. It's a fairly automated system. That's why you don't see a bunch of Oompa Loompas running around with sacks of grains and bags of hops, because it is all controlled by that control room up there. But brewing is still very hands-on, still very labor intensive, so if the brewers can't solve the problem from the control room, you'll see them running around with giant mallets beating on shit all day long trying to get it to cooperate. So any questions on our pimped out brew house? Awesome. Well, I want to wrap this up with a giant thank you. There's only one reason we do these tours, is to thank you guys for being part of Lagunitas. Literally, we would not be where we are today without great people like you telling your friends, telling your family, by telling that stranger at the end of the bar that might become your new best friend about Lagunitas. You've helped us get to where we are today. Because when Tony started this, roughly 32 years old, roughly $32,000 in debt, he started it with some awesome business models. He knew he was going to be beer rich, money poor for years, so he figured, I'm going to give away as much beer as possible and sell the rest. Because he knew a couple sips of this beer, your tongue is going to tell your brain more than my tongue can tell you in a lifetime. I just get paid to mumble about beer. So he figured, I'm going to give away as much beer as possible and sell the rest. So the majority of our advertising campaign for the last 20 plus years has been going directly to nonprofit groups. Last year we gave away in excess of 420,000 cases to nonprofit groups. There's that number again, 420, Google it if you need to. So if you're affiliated with a 501(c) nonprofit, hit us up. We have a giant donation tab on our website. Send us your proposal. And through our distributors, we will try to send beer anywhere in the nation that we sell our beer, in now 49 states. And anywhere in the nation that we're allowed to give away our beer for free, we will send it to you and your causes and hook you up. Because when Tony started this, roughly all of his friends had nonprofits, and they'd come to Tony and be like, dude, can I get some money for my nonprofit? You must be rich, you own this brewery. And Tony was like, no, you got it all wrong. I'm beer rich, money poor. How about I give you a few kegs, you sell it at your fundraiser, you keep the proceeds. It's been a win-win ever since. And so our tap room, our beer garden is closed every Monday and Tuesday, so we can host nonprofit events down there, holding over 250 plus people. Our tap room upstairs, our original loft, our original tap room, only open in public 1 and 3 o'clock tours, Monday through Friday for tasting tours. We donate that space almost every day of the year to nonprofit groups for fundraisers. So yes, hook up with us if you're affiliated with a 501(c). And we have free concert series in our amphitheater all summer long. 420 tickets are given away to those. We do sell beer and food to these concert series. We've had Emmylou Harris out there. We've had Les Claypool, Carl Denson and Tiny Universe, the Wood Brothers. Yeah, the list goes Lucius, the list goes on and on. We do sell beer and food during those concert series. They're free to you guys all summer long, but at the end of the season, 100% of the food and beer sold goes to supporting music programs in local school district. Tony's an artist, he's a musician, he knows how important these programs are. And so, thank you for being part of Lagunitas. We literally would not be where we are today without great people like you. When you're in the tap room, the right-hand side of the tap list, one-off beers, seasonal beers, you won't find many places. And if your diet allows, lamb and beef burgers raised right out back. Lagunitas program. So cheers, guys. Viva la Revolution. Thanks for being part of it.